Never, never, never assign a negative meaning to anything that happens in your life. This is something all of you need to learn. I say you need to learn this because the world has taught you the opposite. When something bad happens, it deserves a bad meaning. And it seems logical. But let me tell you, this logic is a fallacy. This logic is destructive. It's not logic at all. Let me explain why. If something bad happens, I'm not saying you perceive it as bad. Sometimes you perceive something as bad, but it's not really that bad at all, or it's not even bad. It's you that perceive it as bad because your perception was wrong. I'm not talking about you perceiving it as bad. I'm talking about when something objectively bad happens in life. Whether it's a divorce, or whether people abandoned you, or they turned on you, or you were set up, or someone suddenly passed away, or whatever it is in your life. That's bad. That's a bad impact. Whenever something bad happens, you need to process and accept what happened. And by processing what happened, well, that's what you do when you accept it, you process it. By processing the bad that happens, you become better. Because you can't change the bad that happens. You can't undo the past. But you can process the past and be better than in the past. So you have to go from bad to better. And the way you go from bad to better is by processing the bad. Realizing the bad is not all there is. There is more beyond the bad that happened to you or that happened around you. Now, that does not mean you don't admit how the bad affected you. You have to admit to yourself how the bad affected you. You have to admit how the bad affected you, but realize it's not all there is. So you have to assign a positive meaning to the bad things that happen. A positive meaning does not mean that the bad thing is not bad. It doesn't mean you sugarcoat it. No, it simply means that you admit that in life you have to go from bad to better. And to go from bad to better, you need to process the bad thing that happened. And you also have to assign a positive meaning for you concerning the bad that happened. That's realistic, that's rational, and that's beneficial. What happens is a lot of people, they focus on the bad that happened and they lose sight of everything else. The bad thing that happened didn't just happen out of the blue, even though you may experience it that way. It was the result of some historical process. It happened in a context, in a community. So for you to process the bad thing that happened, you need to also process the timing and the whole context that was going on. And that's what you need to do in order to process things. But a lot of people are so shocked by the bad thing that happens that they get stuck resisting the bad thing. They either resist the bad thing by denying it ever happened, or they admit it happened and now they're stuck meditating upon it. Ignoring or not even to mention something bad happened is the same as resisting it. So whether you're dwelling on the bad that happened or you're resisting it, in both cases you're stuck in the past. So you're going, instead of going from bad to better, you're going from bad to worse. And that's what's going on with a lot of people. They go from bad to worse. But they don't notice that they're getting worse. They don't notice they're getting worse because they think that by not dealing, or it means not processing the bad that happens, that it won't affect them. Or they think that by being controlling about what happened to them, what they call enforcing boundaries, all of that, that suddenly they manage it. Listen, you are a vulnerable creature with a vulnerable mortal body. One day your body will expire, and it will be Christ that needs to resurrect you. During this lifetime, you will always be a vulnerable creature at the end of the day. So what a lot of people do is, when something bad happens, they want compensation. Compensation in the form of violence, compensation in the form of being codependent on other people, or becoming addicted, because addiction may not be a choice directly that people make, but it's a result of escaping, which is a choice. People look for compensation for the fact they're vulnerable creatures. No, embrace your vulnerable creature, embrace all the ramification of it, because then you're able to process what happened, both good and bad, in a proper way. You cannot heal nor recover from something you don't process. And the reason why so many people never heal nor recover is because they assign a negative meaning to something bad that happens. If something is bad, don't give it a bad meaning. It's just a bad thing that happened. It doesn't mean you're a bad individual and your whole life is bad, or that everything around you is bad. No. It simply means a bad thing happened, and you're not able to undo the bad thing that happened, but you're not able to change the past, but you're able to overrule the past, to shut down the impact of what happened. That's something you can do, to some extent. What I mean is, if someone passed away and there was a sad thing that happened, listen, you can now learn how to appreciate people who are still alive around you. If you were set up and people lied on you, now you know what? I can't undo what happened. What I can do is undo the consequences. So now I only deal around people that really have good intentions for me. What I mean is, you cannot literally undo the past, but you can undo the impact of the past by becoming better today. It doesn't mean you can turn back all consequences of what happened in the past, no, but you can deal with the effects. You should go from bad to better. So again, never assign a negative meaning to anything that happens in your life. Never do that. But a lot of people do exactly that. They don't even check whether it was really a bad thing that happened. They feel bad about it, so they think it must be bad, because they perceive it as bad. And now they perceive something as bad and assign a bad meaning or a negative meaning to it. And now they go in a vicious cycle of resentment and resistance concerning the bad thing. Never assign a negative meaning to anything that happens in your life. Look, assigning positive meaning, again, is not denial, which some call toxic positivity. Positivity is never toxic. If you call positivity toxic, it's not positivity, it's just denial. Assigning positive meaning is not the same as denial. You admit the bad that happens, and if the bad that happened wasn't your fault, but it involved neglect from others, you admit this too. But not to hold it against these other people, but so that you can understand, okay, I may not be able to relate to those people the same way anymore. I need to move on, and if that means moving on without certain people, I need to move on without them. Moving on is an inside job. It's you improving on the inside. Moving on is not the same as moving away. You can move away, move to another country, switch jobs, change locations, whatever, change friendships. But just because you move away doesn't mean you've moved on. Move away simply means that you've moved away. But if you haven't improved internally, you haven't moved on. So, to move on, to actually go from bad to better, or from good to better, you have to accept what happened, process it, so that you can become better in the here and now. Because you only have the here and now to operate in. Tomorrow is affected by today, so you have to act today. You can't affect the past, so you have to process the past and operate today. So, never assign a negative meaning to anything that happens, that did happen, or whatever will happen in your life. Process everything by remaining Christ-centered. Remember, He's the center for our existence. It all revolves around Him. Always remember this. Be at peace.